Hello! Why have I not posted anything to YouTube in 2 months? I'm about to tell you on the state of the company. Hi, quick note from Night Shift Editor John. In this video, I'm going to discuss my credentials and everything I'm personally working on. I'm hoping you'll find some part of it interesting and follow along. Comments motivate me to keep working on stuff. Alternatively, you might decide I have the skills to help you with something that you want to accomplish. I can absolutely help you with that, for money. However, I have very few subscribers and very little self-esteem. If you ask me a question about circuits or coding, there's a very real chance I'll make a 5 to 10 minute video for your exact question, source code or circuit board included. The best way to take advantage of that offer is to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate your interaction. Enjoy the show. There will be links magically added to the video. If you want to jump to something, click in the video description. So, Firefly Robotics, it's just me. Everything I do that's not my day job is under this label potentially. So what do? I do IT. Not every single piece, but dang near it. I started off land mobile radios, base stations, Motorola handhelds, etc. Then I moved over to tier 1 help desk, phones, Ethernet cables, computers, printers. Since then, I've been doing Linux Plus certifications on the side, and what I'm working towards now on the side is turning all those skills, hardware and software, into robots and the software to run them. Hi, editor again. I should also mention I spent 2 years as a sysadmin and full stack dev for a research project at my university and 3 years as a web app backend dev. I just left that role to work exclusively in software project management. I'll note that videography is not among my talents, but I'm muddling through. Okay, so last couple of weeks, tutoring. I've been doing a lot of this. Basically, over the last couple of years, my certification class schedule has really thinned out by 80-90% less classes. So I've been doing a lot of one-on-one tutoring. The one-on-one hourly tutoring is at a pretty low rate comparatively. Maybe 4 or 5 times more money I would make doing a certification class than tutoring. But the thing about a certification class is I'm busy for 3 weeks and I get paid a lot. With tutoring, I can fill up just 1 or 2 hours at a time, so still worth it. Wyzen is the platform I've mostly been working on. I think it's been pretty good to me. Their percentage is pretty steep, so whatever I bill, 25% of that money doesn't even make it to me. It goes to the platform. And that is steep, but they do actually bring me a pretty steady stream of people that otherwise I would be, advertising to. I would not be able to fill up my schedule without a Wyzen. It also puts me at Wyzen's mercy. So here's something that just happened. My account stopped showing up in search results. So for 2 weeks, I got no new students, and about 75% of the people I'm tutoring are only going to purchase 1 or 2 hours of tutoring. So when the new requests stop coming in, my hours go down to nothing. So I've lost about 3/4 of my tutoring income, which that extra free time is kind of how I had the time to write this video script. But, I'd almost rather be making the money directly. YouTube is not really an income source for me at all. So Wyzen's really good if you want to make sure that the tutor you're getting is not a scammer. But there's my record. I think it speaks for itself. And something that's not a good fit for Wyzen is anything billable hours. One of the things I'll be getting to is I've been doing a lot of Arduino projects and circuit design for people that are not looking for a by the hour lesson. They're looking for design help or kind of offline asynchronous development of software or hardware. So that's really not a good fit for Wyzen. You have to go through another platform or directly to me to handle those. The scheduler. So one thing I've noticed from tutoring over the last several months or a little over a year is that it's awful to offer someone a time, mark that time as held, not offer it to anybody else, and then they have to pick something else. It leaves gaps in my schedule. I'm constantly converting the times I'm available to everyone's time zones. I make mistakes with that. So I started developing a scheduler application. And here's basically what it looks like. So I know there are websites that provide this kind of functionality, but I just really wanted to take a crack at it myself because I develop software. It's not just a way to do the schedule, it's a advertisement of the stuff that I'm capable of. So the main use cases here were for my wife to be able to block off my time for appointments and stuff so we can both see when I have students, when I'm actually available, and let people instantly through the website click on a time slot and reserve it. The one killer feature I've already ironed out is one-click login and creating an account for people. So the result of that would be you get a link and you click on that link and you are instantly logged in under the account I made for you. You can upgrade to a quote-unquote real account, register a username, email, that stuff. But it's not necessary to just schedule a slot, and I can see who scheduled that slot. If you've reached out to me through Wisent or over email, I know who you are, and you shouldn't have to go through the pains of creating an account to save a slot to talk to me in Discord or Zoom or any platform like that. So one click and you're logged in. It's not live yet because it's not quite finished. There's just a couple of display bugs and stuff, and I had a really rough go of this. I'm not a front-end designer, so my websites tend to look rather Spartan, kind of like black text on white, kind of like these awful slides you're looking at. And I shopped it around, probably spent 10 or 12 hours writing documentation, creating little demo videos, shopping it around to people on Fiverr or other gig economy sites. And even for 50 or $100, no one would touch it. No one would even take this working demo website and help me with the CSS. So if you know anybody who would be willing to take this off my plates, help me work out and get that website cleaned up and looking less buggy, I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, I will probably just be asking ChatGPT, and I don't really know CSS all that well, so it'll get there eventually. It's just not going to be very pretty. Next up, got a project called Citopia. I'm kind of their head developer or quote-unquote architect president for a good couple of months now. Basically, they are making a version of Gaia Online. I'm writing their forum API and database. I didn't really shop around for existing solutions to this. Again, I just wanted to have fun, and that was justification enough for me to write my own thing from scratch. So, working so far, they have user login, local account creation, the forums, the posting, the replying, and the permission system. So if you're not a member of a group, for certain private forum groups, those posts won't appear to you at all. Long list of things left to be implemented. What I'm working on next is pagination. So it just returns 10 or 25 forum posts at a time. And the actual dress up element of it, which is everybody has an inventory and you can acquire items and select how you look by purchasing stuff in the shop. The whole economy is for someone else to work out, but I do need to get the images rendering. So they're probably waiting on me because you can't add new features to the backend without the backend developer adding them. But yeah, I put in maybe like 0 to 6 hours a month. It's a pretty slow burn project, but demo that will come up soon. I'm not going to demo now because it's really an API. Who really wants to look at a Linux terminal for how the forum works? So next up, Linux Game Jam. I should probably be counting this video as my kickoff video for that. So I've been doing 2 or 3 game jams a year. I'm programming in C++ and Python. Last game jam, 7-Day Roguelike, I released McRogueface It's a 2D game engine in very bad shape. I'm still working all the details out. But let me let you have a look at that. So here is, there we go. Okay, so let me give the basic demo of what this thing does. You can move around with the arrow keys, maybe. WASD. So I can zoom in on these sprites. They have animations. There's no collisions. These guys are just sort of wandering about. I didn't really get much done except for this framework of some basic capabilities. To summarize the issues I had is C++ does all of the heavy lifting with the visibility down hallways and stuff. Let me just poke my head around another hallway and you can see once you get in line of sight to a different area, it'll be revealed on the map. And things you can't currently see are grayed out. That's all handled in C++. The map itself is handled in C++. Map generation can happen in Python. All the character inputs, all these UIs are developed in Python. And the purpose behind that, which I know it's kind of down in the weeds. People usually don't think about this when you're playing a game. But I like C++ because it's fast. It's genuinely fast. It's not like fast after some magic. It's just if you don't do a terrible job writing it, it executes very quickly. But Python is a lot faster to author. It's a lot more fun to program in. So I wanted that performance from the C++ libraries I'm using, like Tcod, the rendering system, all that stuff. But then I want to develop stuff like the dialog boxes, the missions or quests, the things that don't have to necessarily be lightning fast at every moment in Python. So I made an absolute mess of the code during 7-Day Roguelike, but just compare this to one or two game jams previous, and it's obvious that I'm making just leaps and bounds of improvements to my engine and the code I'm presenting. So that's going great, and can't wait to see what I come up with this week. Next, the Bespoke Robot Society. So I am building a robot. It's actually a enhanced version of this tiny tank that I seemingly 2 years ago revamped, which was a toy kit I've been hauling around from apartment to apartment since 2010. I got almost all of the components to work again. This little motor controller, the tank chassis, the motors, but I souped it up to use a Raspberry Pi Zero. So the small Raspberry Pi, and it had a camera. I soldered all new boards for it. It was a lot of fun. It came out great. There's a couple of YouTube videos of the dogs chasing it around, which they thought was great fun. This is pretty much the final result. The only thing missing from this picture would be the USB bank that powered the computer separately from the rest of the motors. So pretty simple, just a single infrared distance sensor, 2 motors, and a webcam. That was literally all the capabilities of this robot. So Tiny Tank 2 and this is what I'm calling the zip tie edition of this particular robot. So we have a LiDAR unit up top. That's the main new sensor bank. Full-size Raspberry Pi single board computer. I've got a couple of other single board computers that are being evaluated here, like a Tinkerboard, which has a lot more computational ability, or Le Potato. That's the technical term for a Libre computer board that only costs 35 bucks. On the bottom, we've got a custom printed 18650 battery case, some voltage adapters, and the motor controller is up here. Arduino's down here. and a tank chassis that I got from Amazon because I was trying to 3D print a tank chassis from first principles for I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and just doing a terrible job of getting gears to mesh and designing the tracks. That was not what I'm here for. So, other goals for this particular robot operating system to use production grade, real world research robotics software on this, not one little Python script that makes it drive in a circle or stuff like that. Uh, Also, I really want to get around locally and get these robots. There's parts for quantity 2 in my house right now, and one people can drive around, and the other can will also be driven around, and people can have a laser tag battle between the two tanks, and they'll go between they'll zip in and out of some cardboard buildings or otherwise just have some obstacles to let you use that LiDAR and get an idea of what the tank's surroundings are without having to look at the playing field. All this should be playable over the internet, teleoperation. But what I think is way more interesting than teleoperating tanks person versus person is to write software for an autonomous tank that drives around, maps the arena of cardboard buildings, and hunts down the other tank, whether it's a human driving it or another autonomous tank, and they're competing. So robots that would do that need to be able to use their sensors. They need to map the environment. They need to detect the other tank. They need to have strategy like flanking or seeing a tank go one direction and finding where it's coming out on the other side of that. That's what even in the 90s we would have called AI, the bots in a video game. But now we also have real mechanisms that can fail. You send your motors forward, but the tank doesn't necessarily go that far forward. Your tracks can slip, your sensors can lie or have noise. So that's all more difficult, but that's what real robotics is. Otherwise, you're just playing a video game. So, and I'll go on the record here. BattleBots aren't real robots. They're remote controlled. It's basically the WWE version of remote control cars with saws on the top of them. That's not robotics. Robots are automated. They run software. They use their sensors to decide what to do. So that's where I'm going with Bespoke Robot Society. It is currently populated with a lot of NASA employees, but we don't have any official sponsorship. And to be crystal clear, this isn't NASA affiliated at all. I just want to ask my coworkers to participate because I know they're all really smart people and can't wait to see what they come up with. There's already at least one clone tank being built in the club, which is incredible since the plans aren't even complete yet. I'm still working on the plans as someone is already volunteering to follow along. So super excited to see where that goes. Okay, I think that's all of the software projects. So from here on, we'll be talking about the hardware projects. So first up, Tiny Tank. I think it needs 2 PCBs to be really complete. A lot of these parts are already in stock. I just need to do the actual PCB design. Firstly, the power board. That 18650 4 battery pack that I 3D printed works okay, but what I really like to do is not tape the voltage converters on the top of the battery compartment. I'd like it to be one PCB that does all of that work. And something that happened while I was assembling this robot is I destroyed one LiDAR unit by accidentally connecting it to battery voltage instead of 5 volts step down voltage. And that's embarrassing, but it's a real thing that happens when you're doing changes without a specification behind it. So what I envision as a fix for this is a powered USB hub. But to cut down on cables or weird chopped up, USB cables being spliced together, I'd really like to build a USB hub into the battery pack. And what that'll mean is for the low bandwidth stuff like microcontrollers or the LiDAR or things that would be happy operating over USB 2.0, I'm going to plug a USB hub in the power pack that just allows the robot to connect to those things straight through the hub. And the hub is going to be powered directly from the batteries. You cut down on USB cables to the single board computer. It's going to be a lot cleaner solution than running these wires back and forth and chopping them together to get power from different sources than the data is coming from. So 9 volts for the motors and whatever else it needs for controlling the USB hub. Most of that stuff's 3.3 volt logic. That shouldn't be a terribly complicated board. I'm slightly nervous setting up a USB hub. It's the first part I've ever seen that has a humidity warning on the sealed bag that the component came in. So that should be fun. The other part is, okay, here's the laid potato. So this is a Libre computer board, and this is a blank prototype PCB. So there's the blank. It connects to the 40 pins, and I can connect whatever components need to be connected on here. So I'll be testing out these list of components, which all those components there, servo output, gyros, H-bridge, all those different controls have different little pins that they connect with. I'll connect those on a shield, and the people that build copies of this bot, they won't have to do much except for order the PCB or buy one for me, and it'll have all those things ready to plug directly in. These are really easy boards to make yourself because if you're using a connector, here's a real-time clock module. All it uses is a cell battery, and it has these pins. The pins are really well spaced out. It's pretty easy to solder by hand. And if all the board is just connectors from those modules to the same style pins on a shield board, it's really easy to solder it by hand yourself. Or maybe I'll go the full next step, which is to take all the same components that are on the module and build them directly into one PCB, which looks very fancy, but is not strictly necessary to get the job done. I've also got some client boards that I'm making, and I won't discuss other people's boards just in case they are sensitive about their private projects being put out there. But let me break down the method. Number 1, break your project into modules. That's like one of these little single test boards, the demo modules. And a good place to pick those is everything that talks to the microcontroller. So if you have a clock, a gyroscope, a servo output, all those things are separate modules. It's an easy spot to break up your project. 2, find a single module that does that job and buy it. This is one feature in one component. Or, if you need support stuff, like it needs resistors, it needs capacitors, it needs a servo controller and a servo, great, that's one module. 3, breadboard, put everything together on a test circuit. And 4, this is kind of like the optional step of design a PCB to solder those things cleanly and solidly together forever. It's a lot more durable than a breadboard with the dangly wires. Next up, 7 segment and 14 segment displays. So a while back, I did a PCB for this 4-digit 7-segment display. So it's doing a little marquee, might be a little too quick to read, but whatever. I love these displays. They're cheap. Problem is they're pretty hard to control. And you could very easily just throw an entire Arduino or an entire Pico and just control every LED with a separate pin. But I thought it would be nice to control these with shift registers. So a shift register takes, at least the kind I'm using, there's several different kinds, but a shift register takes a pulse of ones and zeros in and then has usually eight pins, that shows the ones and zeros all at the same time. So what this allows me to do is, with just 3 wires, send the pulses to the shift register to say, this is the sequence I want you to display. And then the shift register has a lot of pins on it that go to the actual elements of the display. So that's really cool. It allows you to save pins and do all kinds of neat stuff on the circuit board to control that display. But I just got these 14 segment displays. This is like a blank breadboard. I'm just kind of in the initial stages here. But look at all those segments. And this is the fancy big brother to the 7 segment display that allows you to display, like the lowercase m, a w, some stuff that's actually quite difficult to draw with just 7 segments, which is like a microwave timer. And now you have like a fancy late 90s stereo text display. But there's even more to it. So my previous setup used 2 shift registers. And if you think about the segments there, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 outputs that are used for the parts of the actual numbers and letters. So, and actually 8, because there's also a decimal points. So you have 8 or 1 entire shift register dedicated to what segments are turned on. But I need 2 shift registers because I also have 1, 2, 3, 4 digits that have to be enabled one at a time. So I have 16 bits of output, but I'm only using 12 of them. And that doesn't really align well. If I was going to take one display and put another one on the right next to it, you would have to know that there's 4 wasted bits and kind of adjust your output accordingly. Also, one of the main drawbacks of the way I set up the current 7 segment display board is that every tick or every flash of the digits, I don't really want to look at 1 digit turned on and 3 that are turned off. So this has to happen very quickly. It'll say segment 1, show the number 1, segment 2, show the number 2, segment 3, show the number 3, and segment 4, show the number 4. As 4 separate commands, all 16 bits have to go in, or at least 12, have to go in to assign the output many, many times a second. So this is called persistence of vision. It looks like all of the digits are on at different text values, but really there's a flashing that occurs because only 1 digit can be lit up at a time. So the same is true on the 14 segment display, but there's only 2 displays in a module. So what I'm going to do is separate that logic for flipping on and off. Instead of having just one set of information about which segments are turned on, I'm going to have 2 sets of what segments should be turned on. So the display itself will do the flashing back and forth. The difference between this is on this 7 segment display, on this guy, the Arduino or the microcontroller has to update the display many, many times a second to allow all the segments to be illuminated or appear illuminated through persistence of vision and change to different values. On the 14 segment display, when you send a new data value to it, you can just leave it alone. It will automatically do the persistence of vision, and you'll be able to persistently see whatever is supposed to be on the screen, even if the microcontroller is entirely busy doing something else. Something else that's cool about using exactly 4 shift registers is that the next 2 display units will have 4 shift registers of themselves, and you can connect them end to end. So now instead of having 2 digits and 4 shift registers, I can have 4 digits and 8 shift registers. And you actually don't need to know how many displays there are down this chain, because the way a shift register works, if you put more data into the back, all the data that was at the front keeps going off the far end. So however many displays you have, the text will just scoot along as you add more text to the back. So it's an instantaneous free marquee effect. And all that to say, I'm really excited to play with these display boards. I understand that there's a backpack you could just use. I understand that a Raspberry Pi Pico is $4 and you can just throw them around. Honestly, shift registers probably cost more in this kind of integrated circuit economy these days, but I think my way is more fun, and that's what I'm going to do. All right, now another thing I have going on, auto watering. I did have auto watering more or less working. The problem is that when the relay kicks on to activate the solenoid, the current draw was too high and the Raspberry Pi would immediately reboot, which would turn the solenoid off, and this saga repeats endlessly without actually watering my plants. So I did build this relay board, and this is the culprit, kind of. So what do we have on this board? Pretty straightforward. It's a voltage converter module. That's that blue guy there. And just a little bit of support hardware to turn on this relay. And the relay just connects the 12-volt input to these pins for the solenoid to turn on. And how does that look on the back? It's pretty straightforward. It's just some unshielded wire connecting the different parts together. Includes a micro USB for powering the single board computer. Great. So that needs to actually have some electrical design done to it, because things should not reboot when other things come on, and that can be resolved. I just might have to do some real math and not just slap components together on a circuit board. So what I've done to rectify this is switch to a Pico, the small microcontroller that's going to use way less power. So let's have a look at that guy. Obviously, Pico W, very easy to set up. You just solder those pins on and you're in business. And while I'm at it, I got a soil moisture sensor. And I also have one of this guy with the bare wires, not set up at all yet, a temperature and humidity sensor. So that'll just give some more data about the conditions there and give me a chance to program a little bit more automation into whether or not the plants need water, based on, is the soil too dry? Is it getting too hot outside? And I've already got data from the National Weather Service, but I am looking forward to setting up my own weather station, just a little rain bucket, a wind meter, to evaluate not just in my cell, which might be a kilometer to a side. I'm not sure how big the grids are for the National Weather Service, but at my actual house, right on top of my garden. How much rain are we getting? When the wind blows from which direction? Yeah, it's detailed and probably not super important. Really, it's more important to just turn on the water twice a day, right? So, honorable mention, I've got a pick and place machine. Maybe I will start playing with that when some of these PCBs come back, because there's probably about half dozen PCBs I need to order. My shed really wants to become a workshop for me. I need to dig a trench, put electrical cables in the ground, wire it up, install air conditioning. It's Florida. I'm not going to work in a shed with no air conditioning. I'll just have a terrible time. House stuff. My house needs a new deck. The patio looks like garbage. And, I do live here, so I may have to stop doing electronics and fix up my home. A photo frame. I built a photo frame and set up a basic photo upload database for it. It never got wired up correctly before I gave it to my mom for Mother's Day like 4 years ago. That is a project that's near and dear to my heart. There's about 10 trillion photos of my 1-year-old that my wife has, and I know that it would be great to be able to beam those to the grandmas instantaneously. I really want to circle back to that one. And a spice sorter. This annoys me that it's not a thing, or maybe I just haven't Googled enough. But I hate looking for spices in the spice cabinet, and I would really like to just put them through something that cycles through, and you can put it in a recipe you're looking for, and the right cans get kicked out of that circle of spice cans that are rotating around. Have not found the time for that, but I will come back to it. I swear. All right, thanks for watching. You can find me at all the places. If you clicked on this video at all, please subscribe. It's humiliating to have more videos than subscribers. I'd appreciate the help in that category. And have a great day. The current draw was too high and the solenoid did whatever it does. Yeah? Yay, he's clapping. Yeah? Yes, it's a very satisfying mute button. It's got that perfect click to it. And it blinks when it's muted. Okay.